nervous, thinking, oh, is anyone going to turn up? Hi, Paula. How important is the size of the paper for the Wild Watercolour course? Right, well, the first thing I will do is start to talk about paper. Yes, A3 size is a good size, but you can, you can get away with some smaller pieces. But I would say 11 by 7, 11 by 15, which is basically a quarter of an imperial sheet of paper, is the minimum for the larger exercises. I do a few little exercises, which I'll probably do one for you here on paper that's about this size, which is like 1/8 of a sheet. It's about I would say it's about 11 by 7. I think that's kind of in talking about inches. I'm still kind of quite a kind of imperial kind of person. So yes, I mean, I've known many people have done the course working on small scale. I mean, you could get away with this size. This is not too far off from A5. So A4, depending on if you work with A sizes or if you work with 11 by 7, 10 by 8, that kind of thing. But there are no real hard and fast rules. I just prefer for you to work bigger, because bigger is looser, bigger is more expressive, bigger is more freeing and more joyful. But I do recommend you get hold of some cheap paper so that you can be free and large scale at the same time, or work on the back of old paintings. Now, I used to be when I was in art college, I was always told never to use both sides of the paper. It was very unprofessional. But since I have found that I've been throwing away so many watercolor just in the course of my teaching, I have to do so many exercises, so many examples. I go through so much paper. I'm always experimenting, and I'm starting to feel really guilty about the hi Angela about the amount of paper I'm using. So I've this year I've been much more sustainable, I hope, and I'm using the back of many kind of test pieces and failed paintings, because if you're using 300-gram paper, 140-pound paper, it's thick enough. You're very seldom, unless you're someone who really scores into the paper, you're very seldom likely to see the results of the painting on the other side. And I've been trying to find out how to recycle watercolor paper, and it's amazing how little information there is on the internet. I would love input from anybody who knows about whether it's okay to put your watercolor paper into the paper recycling. But the research I did, that's what I used to do, but then the research I did said that if you've got paper that's got paint on it, it can't be recycled. So I don't know. So there's lots of other ways. Obviously, I did some posts recently about how we can reuse our paintings. Obviously, you can turn them into cards and bookmarks and all sorts of things like that. Sorry, I'm kneeling on my stool here, which is going to hurt my knees after a while. I think I was just getting close to the computer. So do ask questions. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about papers straight away. I'm going to talk about the materials used in the course. And I want to just go through some of my favorite papers, my favorite cheaper papers, because I think that is a question that's often asked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my camera to the desk cam I've got here. So let me just see if I can do that. Okay, hopefully. And I'm hoping it's not reversed. It's looking a little bit reversed. It's looking a bit mirrored, but if it is, there's I'm hoping that you'll be able to I could fix that probably, but I'll end up. So I've got a fair kind of collection of things that I use on the course, but I want to talk about paper first. So I'm just going to move the paper into the kind of center area, and there are some examples of work that exercises and so on that you will be doing in the course. Now, the first few weeks we stick to just using indigo color, and the indigo color is accessed through two media: ink and watercolor. That's what I'm trying to say. So in the first week we look about how to mix up this kind of indigo color. Now I could talk for about 20 minutes on just the subject of indigo, but I'll just suffice to say that it doesn't really matter what kind of dark blue that you use, so long as it is a pleasant, very blue. Just going to admit somebody to the call. Hello, Raila. And so this kind of blue, it doesn't really matter how you mix it, but I'll give lots of instructions on how to attain that kind of color. But you can also use a ready-made indigo mix such as Winsor & Newton indigo, which is one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite colors and something that I just use all the time. But you can easily mix up an approximation to this, because indigo, say I'm talking about paint now instead of paper, I'm supposed to be talking about paper, but there you go. And so the indigo, this actual indigo paint is made up of 3 different pigments, which is a black and ultramarine blue, and let's see what colors are there. Well, there are 3 pigments that make it up anyway. And so what I just tend to do is you can just easily mix any dark blue, such as ultramarine or Prussian blue, with any black, and you will certainly get a paint that you will be able to use on the course. So don't worry if you haven't got those exact colors. So here's some paper. Now this pack of paper wrapped up in the plastic. Now it's got a British supplier on it, but what they do is they buy this paper in from Fabriano, and they cut it into quarters, and then they sell it as a practice paper pack. So you may be able to get this kind of thing in other shops in whatever country you're in. So, but it's Fabriano watercolor paper, which is their kind of standard. It doesn't seem to have a kind of brand name, but it's the kind of stuff they put in their sketchbooks. It's their kind of cheaper stuff. It is a mixture of cotton and cellulose. Now, that is an advantage sometimes because, well, one thing about cellulose is it makes for a cheaper paper, but it also makes for a very strong paper. The disadvantage I have with this particular paper, although I have used it in many of the exercises and I still use it quite often, is that it has a very pronounced texture on it, which you can't see in the camera. But it does tend to sort of come up. I'll see if I can find an example of one of these paintings that has this texture on it. Well, in this one here, this is an example of the one of the exercises that we do in week 4, which is 3 week, and it's using gouache, and it's using gouache to kind of create a kind of granulated pattern. I don't know if you can see this granulated pattern. This is the second of the exercises where we granulate the tree, and then I'm also using one of my techniques, which is wash off, and but you can see, so I don't want to go too far into that particular, but you can see where the water has washed. You may be able to see that there's a very pronounced texture to the paper, and that's come up in the see if I can get it to focus. So where you can see that's the texture, and that can look really attractive, but sometimes it just kind of it doesn't. So although it's a very good paper, it's very, very strong. The good thing is you can kind of scrape it and scratch it and really treat it quite badly. It's a very strong paper, and it handles ink very, very well. And it also makes watercolors. It's very responsive paper, and I like it a lot. But sometimes you just don't want to use it. And so for another type of paper I like to use is this one, which is this is called Khadi paper, and it is a kind of recycled. It's from the textile industry. It's from India. It's 100% cotton, but it's very, very soft, and it is really lovely for when you're painting. It's very good for week 5, which is cloud week. It's got a kind of creamy texture to it. It may be looking a little yellowy in this light. But that's just the camera. But it is a little bit off-white. It's very, very soft. It has really wonderful qualities, and I love to paint clouds with it. It's really lovely for watercolor wet in wet techniques. And so it's also has an advantage of being fairly inexpensive generally anyway. So hopefully that depending on where you are, but it is fairly inexpensive. And now this is, I do apologize if the picture is reversed. I'm not quite sure why that's happened. But this is Canton XL, which you may be very familiar with. And I find this paper is very, very cheap, and it's very large because this particular pad is A3 in size, and it's got a reasonable texture to it. It's got you can't, using both sides. I mean, you could use both sides, but the texture is mostly on the one side of it. It's very good for ink. It is very vibrant when using inks, and that's because it is I think 100% cellulose paper. It doesn't have any cotton in it at all, and that's why it's so cheap. But it's a good strong 140 pound paper, and I find it really useful because you can just be so expressive on it, and you really don't feel as if you are you'll lose some of the fear of using those sheets of paper, especially as we in this course we do use quite a lot of paper. So those are the papers that I tend to, and I tend to go towards this paper. I did use, you can also use any good student grade paper, such as Winsor & Newton watercolor paper. I have tried Strathmore. I didn't like it. I didn't find it strong enough. But most student grades papers will be okay. But these are the ones that I like to use. Now I realise, if you're using Arches, you will get a better result. I mean, Arches is a wonderful paper. It tends to make your paintings so much better all the time. But it is unfortunately, it is one of those things that costs so much that I find it just restrict. I have a wonderful Arches pad that I bought recently. I'm just going to go back to me for a moment. I have a wonderful, very large Arches block that I bought, I think, over a year ago, and I still haven't done anything with it apart from a very quick kind of ink demo, and that was kind of really just for demonstration purposes. And it just absolutely freezes me, and I find it very, very hard to justify the paper, whereas I just can feel so relaxed and free. And there is another type of paper which I do recommend, which is called Fabriano Unica, and that is not quite so heavy. It's about 100 pounds in weight, 275 grams or something like that, and it has a very nice texture to it. But it's kind of quite a soft paper because it's actually a printmaking paper, and it also has got cellulose content to it, and it also takes ink really well. And it's just a nice paper to use, especially if you want to get some kind of soft effects on it. And I use it to do my kind of some very quick intuitive landscapes, which are part of my wild landscape course, if some of you have done that. So yeah, please keep the questions coming, because it's very, very important that we communicate via the chat, because otherwise I'm just going to be kind of talking possibly about things that aren't quite as interesting. I'm going to do a little bit of a demo in a minute, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of hold up and show some of the things that we'll be doing in the first weeks of the course. So for this webinar is to inform you about the course. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the course that some of you may have already kind of gleaned some of this, but it's a 6-week course. The first week is all about just tuning in to your intuition and not being outcome based, not being outcome led by I think that something that watercolorists often feel is that they feel they have to have a completely complete picture in their mind of what the painting is going to be before they start painting. They often work from a photograph. Now, this is something that I don't recommend. Personally, I try not to work from photographs, although sometimes obviously you have to look at a photograph, or sometimes you have to make a note of a particular landmark, such as a shape of a hill or something like this. But I think that if you're, in general, I recommend not working with photographs, for my style anyway, because it's all about embracing the accidents. It's about letting things develop, and working from an intuitive standpoint, and also not having a preconceived outcome about what your painting is going to look like. And it's a kind of a training But it's also an attitude, and it's kind of a bit of a philosophy as well. Bonnie says, "Can I please review the course content too, and how many sessions?" So I could sort of try to open the my internet connection may not tolerate the strain though. If I open my let me just see if I can open the my version of the app, and then I can show you a little bit about how it looks. So I will see if I can share the screen now. Let me see. I think it's this one. Let's see. Now it's asking me to do something. The problem with this computer, let me just say, to share your window, allow screen recording for Chrome. Okay, right. Okay, now I've just that's absolutely typical. I've got to just enable something. So just hold on a second, and hopefully I will be able to share my screen in a moment. That's always happens if now. Okay, well, I'm not sure whether it will let me. We'll just have to see. That's the problem with using this computer. I knew there would be something about using this more modern computer. Let me see, hopefully. No, it's not. Ah, okay, right, it's not allowing me to do it. Well, that's really handy. Okay, I'm going to just describe what the course is all about. So do apologize for that. I mean, it is something I will just be showing you kind of a window. The course is 6 weeks long. On every Saturday, I will release a chapter of the course. In the chapter, there will be an introductory video. There will be a recording of the webinar that I will be holding every Monday. So obviously it won't be there on this Saturday when I release the first week's content. There will just be an introductory paragraph and possibly a short video from me saying hello. But then when the recording of the webinar that happens on the Monday becomes available, then I will upload it to the course there. But then that's just the introductory part where you get the webinar. The actual course itself is a series of exercises where you will be working through many kind of short videos. They're going to be fairly short exercises or short videos, but the actual exercise itself, I would recommend you practice 3 or 4 times, and you will be going through. So I'll do a little demonstration of the kind of thing that we'll be doing in week 1. First of all, we'll be looking at the idea of Enso, which is Japanese. I don't know if I pronounced that right. It's a Japanese discipline where you just get a big brush, and now this is my own version of Enso, so it's kind of a little bit more abstract. The whole idea of Enso painting is to just take a big brush and some ink and just create a near perfect circle on a piece of paper, and that is the discipline. And it's just the meditative nature of creating that near perfect circle. But then what I do is that I sort of work into it a little bit, and I just encourage broad brush strokes, and that's why I like the large piece of paper. I encourage broad brush strokes, and then working into using my key techniques, which is using alternately a wet brush and a brush loaded with paint. I will talk about how to mix in this first week. I'll talk about how to mix the paint, how with a sort of consistency of the paint that I use, which is a very strong, what I call a very strong wash. And I will also tell you how to mix the indigo ink, which is another sort of quite large part of the techniques. So I alternate using watercolor and ink and water, and I'm encouraging in these first exercises just a kind of free, meditative exploration of the media, and actually allowing the water and the pigment to flow together and not disturb it too much with a brush. In fact, I talk very much about not using a brush and using other implements instead, but just using gravity, so that's something that obviously that I will be showing as well. Well, maybe not obviously. So after we've experimented with these kind of abstracts, we look at some of the most basic techniques, and one of the basic techniques is using the pipette. So the pipette is a very, very important part of the techniques. and basically I haven't got very many clean ones anymore. But I've got so basically the pipettes are just ordinary plastic 3 ml pipettes, and we talk about, which I'll do a little demo in a minute. We talk about using the pipette for various parts of the technique, and I go through drawing with water and adding ink and watercolor. So it's all about the basic techniques in the first week, and we create some interesting little compositions. And what we'll be doing is working very, very simply with kind of flower shapes and forms, and just practicing leaf shapes and stem shapes and things like that. Not that I'm a floral painter, you can tell I'm not a floral painter. I don't do a great deal of florals. I do a lot of trees. But I find that this is a really good exercise just to loosen up and learn the technique and the relationship between the water and the ink and the watercolor. So after we go through a few of these techniques with the pipette and with the water and the ink and so on, we will start to create some slightly more things that are kind of reminiscent of treescapes and landscapes and so on. And this will lead us into the second week, which is called Mystical Abstract Landscapes. And I'm going to be doing some pretty much abstract compositions. They are, I mean, you know, and showing you how we can use the pipette and we can use the brushes. Now, I will talk a little bit about the materials in a moment, to create these kind of semi-abstract landscapes, which when you first start off doing them, they may not sort of suggest anything at all. But when you add sort of things like sgraffito elements, such as these branches in the foreground, they kind of come together and they become, it's just like a kind of magic, how they kind of develop into kind of, and I call them meditative or landscape meditations. And so we'll be doing a lot of those, and we'll be looking at also doing mountain shapes. We'll be looking at reflections. We'll be studying gravity and how the water flows and dries specifically. Now, there's something that is very hard to do in the demonstration is showing how something that can look kind of rather not quite resolved when it's wet, but once it's dry, it can actually, you can come back to it and be pleasantly surprised. Or sometimes it's the opposite. You think, I often find it's an inverse ratio actually, that when you think something's going really well when it's wet, it just generally tends to dry not that great, and the opposite seems to happen, that when things are looking kind of, well, I'm not quite sure what that is, you know, if you let it dry and you let gravity affect it, you can just look at the things like the ambiguity of these kind of areas, and okay, they may not look like, you may not be able to define exactly what they are, whether they're trees, clouds, or anything like that, but you can hopefully get a sense of the abstract nature of the landscape and tune into that way of working, so that it becomes more intuitive and you don't feel so tempted to start to fiddle with the brush and start to kind of, no, I'm not quite sure how that's going to dry. And once you touch it with the brush, it's basically it will kind of lose all its kind of its kind of integrity, because it's the natural kind of flow of the water and the pigment together that creates this absolute magic, which as soon as you start moving it around with the brush and sort of softening it or washing it, and I'm totally guilty of doing that many times, but it's just the discipline of trying not to and leaving things and just waiting to see how they're going to come out. Nadia wants to know if you will. Yes, you will. I will put this up on my YouTube, maybe edit it a bit but when I'm sort of like fiddling with the computer. Now, yeah, I do apologize. I put my newest computer up here, which I don't normally do my webinars on, and then of course I find that when I try to share the screen, there's something in settings that requires a restart, and there you go, technology strikes again. So just a quick recap. So that was the second week, mystical abstract landscapes. There will be about 5 or 6 different landscape, usually there's a kind of few preamble exercises, smaller ones, and then you go on to some larger scale pieces like this, which there'll be about 5 or 6 of those in each week's content. And the third week is called Watercolor Secrets, and I really like that week because it's got some really fun techniques in it. One of them is called the mountain technique, which is this is just a quick demo that I did for when I was running the course last year. And this is just such a fun technique to do. I can't really describe it, but that's what happens in one of the things in Watercolor Secrets. Another thing we do is we look at masking fluid. We look at using masks, paper masks and tape masks and things like that. We do a little bit of color mixing on the paper, which is something I really like to do. I like to mix my colors really purely and then put them on the paper and then allow them to mix. And so what we have here, I've got a couple of treescapes here, which I'll let you into a little secret here. I recorded this course way back in 2022, and it was part of a kind of course building kind of challenge. I'm so sorry, Nadia. Bye bye for now. So this is the kind of thing I mean about mixing the colors on the paper. So this is going to be so this is the secret I'm going to share with you at the moment. I'm kind of building the course out as it goes along, because I have the complete course that I created in 2022, but I really wanted to add a lot more interesting and fun exercises to it. But I haven't quite decided which interesting and fun exercises are going to go into which week yet, because I'm as an ex-illustrator and a sort of graphic artist, I tend to work to deadline. And so when I first built the course out in 2022, I worked to deadline, and I kind of more or less built the course out week by week. And I really found that was such a creative and energizing and productive way of working that I've got my basic course. The basic course is there, but I really want to add lots of fun exercises to it, such as this one. But I haven't quite decided if this is going to go into Tree Week or Watercolor Secrets, where I mix the colors on the paper. That's one of the exercises for Watercolor Secrets Week. But we're just going to be looking at the kind of the sort of fun techniques that you can use watercolor, and also the fact that you can use gouache and you can use ink. Now, this course is not just a watercolor course. It uses gouache and ink as well, as some of you may have noticed if you've already purchased the course, you'll have seen the materials list. After Watercolor Secrets comes Tree Week, which many people have often said is their favorite week, because basically it shows you how I paint my trees. I mean, if you're here now, you probably know that I paint a lot of trees. I live in a forest. Just a bit of background: I live in the UK, in Britain, and I live in the west of England, and I live in a forest called the Forest of Dean. And this house, very rundown little cottage, is right in the centre of a forest. One of not a huge one. It's only 15 miles square, but it's very beautiful. And I happen to live in a valley with some very wonderful old gnarly oaks in it, and they are my very favorite trees to draw. Yes, and so that's what I do. So Tree Week, this is one of the exercises from the original course. It was called Double Act, and it is using 2 different techniques. One of these trees is using ink, which is this one, and one of the trees is painted in watercolor, which is this one. So that's why it's called Double Act. It's kind of looking at 2 different ways of achieving the tree art that I create. We're also going to be looking at other techniques, such as washing off. Washing off is something that I really love to do. And ink washing off is really, really fun to do. So that's a kind of little ink exercise there, but it's not quite complete. We look at very, very quick exercises. We're looking at light through the trees, which is one of my absolute obsessions, and how to use the water to just lighten up these branches like that. So that, and then if you build up a composition using these kind of techniques, you will get this wonderful sense of light, and you won't get that kind of silhouette of trees that so often happens. And also the way that you put the tree on the paper, the way you compose the tree, the way you should draw a tree so that it looks like a large tree. That's really important, because many beginners, they try to put the whole tree onto a piece of paper, and of course it always looks as if you're looking at it from very, very far away. You don't get that sense of grandeur and size. So we'll be talking about how to draw trees and some of the tree techniques I use, and it's just a lot of fun, and there's some wonderful things in here. I'm just looking through my my pieces here. After that's another tree there. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean these are all exercises I've done for various demos in the past. I must get ready to do a little demo for you, because otherwise I'll run out of time. So, but do keep the questions coming. So after Tree Week is Cloud Week. So that is very much a watercolor. Although I do use a little bit of gouache to paint clouds, and so clouds are so important and quite difficult to do. So what we do. So this is the Cardi paper. It's got a credit. Oh, hang on, someone wants to join the call. Let me just admit Diane. Okay, hello Diane. Hello Diane. Lovely that you could make it into the meeting. So this is a demo I did for one of the webinars, and it's using the Cardi paper, and you can sort of see how you can get these wonderful soft effects using the Cardi paper. I also use diluted gouache to create the kind of the shadows within the clouds, and I use indigo watercolor to I know it's kind of slightly unrealistic to have such a dark sky, but I like to create these really dramatic skies to put my clouds on. That's it, and basically it's all about controlling the white areas. I mean, because once you've got paint onto those white areas, it's very, very difficult to shift it or to make it remain like a large cloud. Sometimes you end up with a very small cloud in the middle of the paper. So there's plenty of exercises. Some of them are legacy. This one was done a little while back, and this was in the original version of the course. And again, I'm using this indigo paint just to create a very dramatic sky. So that there are, and we're using the gouache again to create the kind of the bases. This is on stretched paper, but you don't have to use stretched paper. I have lots of techniques in my knowledge base on how to stretch paper, and some techniques are quicker than others. And I've even just recently I thought I would challenge myself and see if I could stretch some paper using some kind of some brown packing tape, and and I must say that this kind of paper, this Canson, it really does stretch well, and you can stretch it very, very easily because it's so absorbent. And you can just stretch it very, very quickly by just putting some water on the back of the paper and on the front, and taping it down with kind of basically any old tape. You may have to experiment between the tapes, and that can make this kind of paper a lot more fun to work on as well if you stretch it. But generally, I don't recommend stretching the paper for the course. I want you to be able to work quickly and intuitively, and just basically, you just need to tape down the paper onto your rigid boards. Now, just to go back to materials, it is good to have some pieces of wood, some rigid boards. Now you can see how shiny it is. That's because I've put beeswax on it, and that stops the paper, that releases the paper and stops it from sticking. But if you really haven't got anything like that, you can just find any kind of flat, rigid board. I mean, it could be a piece of gator board or thick plastic. You could even use a piece of corrugated cardboard, but bear in mind that using my techniques, they use a lot of water, and your corrugated cardboard is likely to get quite wet and soggy quite quickly. So what you could do is you could get some tape, and you could cover the board in tape, some heavy duty packing tape, and that will, to make it more, it will make it more dimensionally strong, and it will also protect it from the water to a certain extent. So please do make do whenever you can with the materials that, but you will need something rigid to tape your paper down onto. And I just use masking tape just to tape the paper down. And I'll just do a very quick demo right now, as we don't seem to have too many questions for me to answer. So, and anyway, just very, very quickly, the final week after the cloud week. So basically we've got Let the Water Guide You, which is basic techniques. Then we have Mystical Abstract Landscapes. And then we have Watercolor Secrets. And then we have the Tree Week, which is creating stunning treescapes. I thought of that. I didn't think of a very good title that so many years ago. Next one is Journey Through the Clouds. That's week 5. And then finally, week 6 is some special techniques from my art club. Now, my art club, which I'll tell you about more later, if you're doing the course. I mean, if you're not doing the course, the art club is a wonderful group of people that we meet every month on Zoom, and we do lots of exciting art stuff. So week 6 will be some choice techniques from the 3 years that I've been running the art club, and possibly we'll get to meet some of the people from the art club. Haven't quite decided what we're going to be doing, but it's going to be very exciting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the camera. So I'm so sorry I couldn't preview the course for you, but then the computer said no, so unfortunately not. So I'm just going to see if I can brighten that up a little bit. Okay, so I think I'll better do this landscape because of the camera angle. I'm just going to move some of these things out of the way, but very first, how long have I got? I've got 20 minutes. That should be plenty of time. So let's have a look at some of the other materials. Let me just straighten that up. My camera's not very straight, so okay, so let's just have a quick look at some of the other materials. Now, these are glass dishes. Now, these are kind of the dishes you get. Some supermarket sell puddings or desserts in these little dishes. I collect them. I've got quite a few now. And another thing I do is I collect small jars like this. So this is a kind of like a pesto or sauce jar, mustard jar. So I've got lots and lots of those. And those are what I tend to mix my ink and my watercolor in. I've got dozens and dozens of jars like this with various mixtures of paint in, and this is from my Color Magic course, and they keep pretty well with a nice airtight screw top jar, and just a little addition of a little bit of essential oil such as clove oil or thyme oil will and if you use distilled water to mix your paint mixes, then that will preserve them pretty well. So, but what I tend to do is I tend to mix my paint in these glass dishes, and if I'm mixing my ink, I tend to mix the ink in a little jar so that the ink does keep better if you have the lid on. And I've got a jar there with it says Winsor and Newton Indigo, so that's just a nice strong wash of my Winsor and Newton Indigo, and this is my indigo ink that I've mixed up here, and this is the brand that I recommend, which is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay India ink. But its secret ingredients is it doesn't come in this color. You have to mix it, but you'll have to find out about that later. So another thing I would like you to do is not have to spend any money on brushes or expensive brushes. I know many courses indicate that you need some very high quality brushes. I specialize in using very low quality brushes, such as well, apart from, I mean, most of you've got a Hake brush. I use these. This is my favorite brush and you'll see me using this on nearly every exercise. It's by Dale Rowney, which is a British firm. It's a 1-inch graduate oval wash brush, and you can see it's a great big brush, but it's a little bit like a makeup brush, isn't it? A little bit like one of these. So I mean, you kind of could get away practically if you found some of these in a cheap shop or something like that. You could possibly get away with that, or you could use a brush such as this one, which I got from eBay, and they came in a pack of 10, and they're just literally made of nylon bristles, and they were very, very cheap. They would work pretty well because as I said before, I don't tend to like using brushes that much. I prefer to use the pipette, and then I just use the brush to spread water around the paper. Hopefully we'll see a little bit of an example of that. So I'm just going to take, this is the bit of cardboard that I was just showing you, which you could use, and I'm just going to, and I've got lots of pieces of paper here, which I mentioned before. I'm using the back of previous exercises, and I'm just tearing them in half and using them as kind of little practice pieces. I'm going to, so that's a very small piece, but we're just going to do a little kind of exercise. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Winsor & Newton Indigo watercolor here, and just going to add a little bit of water to it. So what I've done here is I've mixed up a very, very strong wash. And what I mean by a strong wash is I can show you by, hopefully if I can find another piece of, well, we can just use another piece of practice paper. I'm getting so precious about using my practice paper, just the same, but that's a little bit dirtier. So I'm just going to just show you what a kind of strong wash is. In fact, that's not really strong enough. I would normally use one a bit thicker than that. So maybe I shouldn't have added the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly add some more pure watercolor from the tube. Now I realize that watercolor is expensive. Now one thing I do is I use a lot of it, and I realize it's expensive. So you don't have to use this is Winsor & Newton Professional. You don't have to use the really, really expensive, the DS, the Winsor & Newton. You could use just the kind of the cheap brands for now, because it's not really about the pigments. It's about the technique. And also what you could do, and there's another thing that I use a lot of ink. So I'm going. It's on the list that you don't have to buy a bottle this big. This is Pebeo normal India ink, just ordinary India ink. And if you can't afford or can't buy the Bombay stuff, which is can be a little bit expensive and sometimes quite hard to find. Now, if you sign up to the course, you will get access to my knowledge base, which is called the Law of Dolores, because it's got the word law in it. And I talk about ink there. Now, ink is a very strange beast, and there's so many different types of ink on the market. So you do have to be careful which inks you get, because some of these inks aren't suitable. Some of the inks you can buy aren't really suitable for my techniques. I don't recommend a heavily shellac-based ink, because that can be the shellac in it can be very separate. That's much more like it. That's really what I mean by a strong wash, something that's really really deep and dark. And you need lots and lots of jars of clean water. And if you can, that's why I recommend getting these cheap brushes, because they come in a pack of 10. And if you can get 10 of them, then you will always have a clean one that you can grab. Now I've got dozens of brushes just lying around here of various ages. Most of my Daler brushes are getting pretty worse for wear and dropping hairs everywhere. But I always have to have a clean brush and a clean jar of water handy, so that then I can just dip the brush in the water and then just kind of apply it to the paper. And I just want to allow things to just to happen. Is that someone going in? Someone's come in. Okay, right, just a minute. Just letting someone in there. That's Georgia. Hello, Georgia. Nice. I'm so glad you could make it. So basically, the technique is to put the paint down and then just to add water, and then to allow shapes and diversity to happen within that, but then to allow abstraction to develop as well, and also to use gravity and just, I don't want to tip it, just to tip it a little bit. Now you might notice I've got a towel underneath this board. In fact, I don't really need, because I haven't taped this down. Sometimes I tape it down, sometimes I don't. But for the larger exercises, you do kind of, it is better to tape it down. But for these smaller pieces of paper, you don't really need to. And the good thing is I can take the board away and show you that it's really important to have a towel underneath where you're working, so that you can just sort of allow the water just to fall straight off it, and you don't have to worry about it. It's quite a messy, it's the messier you get, the better. Just going to get my bottle of ink now, and I'm just going to, I don't know how old this ink is. Ink can go off. Just going to create some. Now, I don't have really, I'm talking about not being outcome based. I really am not thinking at all about what I'm doing here, because I'm talking. I've never been good at multitasking. So I'm just literally doing some marks, and I'm just adding some water, and I'm going to drop a little bit of ink on this. You see what happened there? Immediately it's almost looking. Now you can't rely on what's going to happen straight away, because whatever, it sometimes looks really wonderful and you think, oh, that's wonderful, if it only stay like that, and it doesn't, because unfortunately it dries differently or whatever. But you learn to work with it and run with it, and just create landscapes and create and I actually quite like the fact that I'm sort of talking while I'm doing this, because that means I'm not really concentrating on what I'm doing, which means that I am totally not outcome led. Just going to get a bit more. So I'm using ink and watercolor. This was the ink and this was the watercolor, and then I dropped some ink on top of the watercolor, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of watercolor on there. See, I'm using a very, very old and bent brush there, and I see I made a bit of a mistake there. I was actually sort of trying to paint something. I don't want to paint anything. I just want to let it happen. So I'm just going to. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see that almost like the vestiges of a landscape is kind of developing here, and we can again use gravity to let it drip off. Now, one good thing about taping things down is that then you don't get these kind of pools of pigment attaching themselves to the edges of the paper. Okay, so that's kind of basically what I'm going to just do now, is add some sgraffito to this, and then I may do a little bit of wash off as well, and then basically that's the whole course. No, it isn't, but I'm hoping I can give you some idea of the kind of the fun you can have when you learn to just kind of let go and allow things to take place naturally. And it's all about the natural action, what Buddhists might call the right action of the pigment and the water just kind of working together. Now, I just want to use a little bit of sgraffito, and what I tend to use with for scratching lines is I use a paint tube, and I use the corner of a paint tube, because it's the handiest thing. And I'm just going to, got to be careful you don't knock anything over when you're doing this, because I'm always knocking over jars and things like that when I'm doing this. I'm just going to just put a few kind of lines in that kind of indicate where possibly some vegetation could be happening. And if you're lucky, you get a white line. Yeah, have I got a white line? Yeah, if you're lucky, you'll get a white line scratching through your paint as well, and that's always a bonus. Let me just see if I can lighten this up a bit. No, that's gone too far. Hang on, I'm just going to have to. Oops. Okay, yeah, I'm just getting a bit of overexposure there. So I don't really like that there, but I don't see if you don't like something, the temptation is to get the brush and start moving it around. Then please don't do that. Don't do that, because it's so important just to allow things. You can see how things are really kind of nicely happening around here, turning into a sky. I wasn't tempted to sort of move that around with the brush. So it's just kind of down here in this corner here, some really nice kind of just edges. You've got to let those things just develop and happen, because it sounds simple, and it is simple, and it's very fun. And so this is the kind of thing that we're going to be doing in the first and second weeks, basically. Now, I'm just looking at the Now this was ink here, so I'm just going to let that dry a little bit, and then I'm going to take my spray bottle. That's very important. You get a spray bottle. Now this one, I don't think this one's my favorite. I've got two spray bottles here. Now these are kind of bottles that you would have cleaning fluid in, or de-icer, anything like that. And you do have to they do kind of wear out, and sometimes they get a bit splattery. They are quite messy. They're a bit imprecise. I've got another one here. You can get this one all from a cheap shop. It's like a Now what you don't want is a mister. You want something that creates droplets. Droplets are the most important thing. That's another technique which I will show you again. But I'm just going to. I think I'll. Oh, let's see. Let's try this one. I'm just going to try a little bit of wash off on this. Now you can see why you need the. You can see why you need the towel, because it's kind of messy. Now I haven't got now. This is the Fabriano paper, so I don't know if you can see that the herringbone pattern is starting to really assert itself. Can you see that herringbone pattern? And it's like a zigzag, and that is the real disadvantage of Fabriano, is that sometimes it looks okay on the paper, but sometimes it just doesn't look so good. Also, it's ideal if you get, when you do the wash off, it's ideal when you get a completely white shape, but sometimes it stains the paper, and I think that will happen less if you use Canson XL or Fabriano Unica than this particular paper. Got a bit of a splatter going on there, so I'm just going to spray a bit more just to get rid of that, and I'm just going to try spraying that bit off as well. That might be too much. I might have overdone it. Okay, now this is the kind of thing that you can allow gravity to apply to it as well, by just kind of letting it sort of tipping it up and just kind of leaving it at an angle to dry, and then you will possibly get some really nice effects that way as well. And so that kind of, in a nutshell, is basically some of the techniques that I use on the Wild Watercolour course, and they're exciting and fun, and they're not always predictable. So I've taken a complete gamble, in the fact that I'm hoping that this will have turned into something very beautiful by the time it's dry, but there's always the possibility that it won't have. So I've lost some of my edges down there by spraying, but there are some really quite nice little bits in it. Whoops. Right, let me see if I've got any more questions to answer. Paula, after the ink and watercolor combine, does the paint become permanent? Can you go back later with a second color coat and the original stays put? Yes, Paula, yes. The ink will stay permanent, but you can, if you're careful and you use a soft brush, you can re-wet even a completely temporary surface like watercolor, but you can re-wet it. It is totally possible to do that, and then you can go back in. But going back in is something that one often needs to do. Let me just go back to my face time, because we're kind of running out of time now. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope my quality of my I think that possibly, yeah, I know I've been running too many windows in the background. Anyway, but also the quality of the calls can deteriorate where I am. I do live in a forest. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you get some idea of my teaching style. Basically, that's what you get. All the videos have me talking just like this over the top of them, whereas but you will see I'm using a desk camera to film myself do all the exercises. Just in the last couple of moments, I'll just show you, see if I can see any more exercises that I can show you that are typical of the course. I think I've shown you nearly all of them. This one's a kind of nice one, because it shows a little bit of it shows an ink wash off on some trees. Now it's not, it's just one of those little kind of this piece of paper exercises, just like the one I did. But it does show this wonderful technique, which is the ink wash off, which is a really lovely technique which you can adapt to all sorts of different things. If you're a member of the if you've joined the Facebook group, now I'm saying, I do have to say that I haven't I'm not I think it might be World Events, but I haven't had quite so many people signing up to the course as I have in previous years. And so I'm not entirely sure whether a WhatsApp group is going to be doable, because I think that it could be that there just won't be enough people in it. But obviously what I'll have to do is I'll have to poll everybody who is signed up to the course and say, what kind of community groups do you want to take part in? And I can always start it up, and but I have to warn you in advance that possibly when you have too many community groups and there's like a couple of people in each one and they're not posting that often, some people like to post and some people don't. I found the Facebook group. I know it's Facebook, and I know we all find Facebook a little bit difficult, but it has been overall the most successful. I might start an Instagram chat group, and there is a built-in chat group within the app itself. That hasn't been that popular with students so far, but it could be that changes. It all depends on the student cohort. You can always email me, but as far as feedback goes, it's just I don't really give email via email feedback, but because I prefer to do it on one of the community channels so everyone can participate. Anyway, I must go. I've just run out of time. Please ask me any questions you like. Hopefully you've got my email address by now. I've spammed you with enough messages, and I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, if you're watching me on YouTube, yes, just you can ask me anything, and just email me or message me on Instagram. Thanks so much. Have we got any more questions just before the end? And thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Paula. Okay, bye for now. Hopefully see you on the course, and I definitely will see some of you on the course. Bye-bye.